Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and welcome to episode number 11 of the InnovaBuzz podcast, the podcast designed to help smart businesses with an interest in innovation and the Internet of Things to be even more innovative. Now, in today's episode, my guest is Govi Rao, who's the president and the CEO of Noveda Technologies, who are based in Bridgewater, New Jersey, in the US of A. Govi and I met many years ago when we travelled together through India to do some market research for Roman Haas. We were both working for Roman Haas at the time, and when I first met Govi, he struck me as being an extremely energetic, passionate, very driven and intelligent individual, and certainly all of those traits come through again in today's interview. Now, we talked a lot about the importance of having a great team to every business in today's interview, and Govi is certainly very proud of his team. He talked about having a team that's great and inspiring and inspired, which is fascinating to look at it from both sides of that. So we'll learn a lot more from Govi. We also talked about how he handles the challenges of maintaining cash flow in a small startup business and generating investment through strategic partners, as well as how a small company can deal effectively with large corporations as clients. It was great fun. There are a lot of great learnings and fascinating lessons that Govi shares with us today, focused on the challenges of a small startup company with a big vision and an innovative product. Now, this week's innovation tip is use your data. It's impossible to improve anything that you haven't measured and that you don't have meaningful data that tells you where the current status is at. So measure everything, set up systems that gather meaningful data, that present it in a meaningful way, that displays it prominently throughout your organization so that all of your staff can actually see what's going on, because they will all have their views and have suggestions for improving things. When you've measured things and your data is actually being used to improve things, then you come back and look at the data again once you've made changes to see whether the effect is actually being realized that you're intending. So use your data, gather it together, and it's amazing how really good data will not only help you improve processes and systems and things you're doing, but actually drive change in behavior, because people will understand why the changes are taking place and what benefits they're bringing to that particular process or system when they see the data and they see the change and the improvement in the data. Before we meet Govi, a quick competition announcement. This week's prize is sponsored by Noveda Technologies, because Govi has kindly offered to donate a copy of Peripheral Vision by George Day and Paul Schoemaker. So this sounds like a really fascinating book. Govi told me about it at the beginning of the interview, and I haven't read it myself, but the book deals with small signals that you can recognize way in advance of trends that might be happening down the track in your particular industry or your particular niche market, and then being able to react and respond accordingly to those signals and recognizing the changes in advance. So it does sound quite fascinating. So stick around for details on how you can enter the draw to win that prize later on in the interview. So now, without further ado, let's go into the Innovation Hive and get the buzz from Govi Rao.
This is the InnovaBuzz podcast, helping smart businesses be even more innovative.
Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm very pleased to have here with me today on the InnovaBuzz podcast, all the way from Branchburg, New Jersey in the USA, Govi Rao, who's the president and the CEO of Noveda Technologies. Welcome to the podcast, Govi.
Thank you, Jürgen. Glad to be here and appreciate the opportunity to reconnect with you again.
Yeah, it's a privilege to have you here. Now, just for our listeners, Noveda Technologies is an innovative leader in real-time web-based energy and water monitoring. The company has patented software solutions which help their clients reduce energy and water usage by using advanced monitoring systems and applying technology that basically leads into our theme of the Internet of Things to solve real-world problems. So it'd be really exciting to hear from Govi about how they do that, the challenges they face, and what's ahead for Noveda Technologies. Now, before we learn more about Govi and Noveda, I'd just like to announce today's competition prize, and Govi has very kindly donated a copy of Peripheral Vision by George Day and Paul Schoemaker. Now, I had a brief look at that because we just spoke about that just prior to recording the podcast. They talk about emerging technologies changing consumer tastes, and that providing tremendous opportunities, but also threats which often begin as weak signals, and weak signals from the periphery. So they talk about, how good is your peripheral vision, how good is your sense in interpreting and acting on those signals as an organisation and as individuals. So that sounds like a really interesting book, and I'm looking forward to Govi will introduce the competition later on in the interview. So stick around for details on how you can win that prize. Okay, Govi. Now, before we learn about some of the fabulous things you're doing there at Noveda Technologies, let's take you back to your childhood and find out what you wanted to be when you were a young child. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, Jürgen, I think there's an amazing theme of coincidence here, which is from all your podcasts. Growing up, I actually grew around relatives, elders who actually were in the Air Force and flying planes, and I automatically sort of took to it. So my dream and passion in life when I was growing up was actually to fly jet planes. I mean, technically jet planes, and just to sort of take that thought process forward, I actually ended up joining the Indian Air Force as my first career. So that's where I was, and I started the Defense Academy training, which didn't last as long as I would have liked it to because of eyesight and other developments. So I had to sort of move away from the Air Force, and even though I had a technical education, had to go into the business life in terms of training, education, etc. To go back to your question, my first passion in life has been flying. And after leaving the Air Force and coming here, or leaving the services and coming here to the U.S., I've actually taken to flying private planes as well.
Okay.
So it's just it's a passion. I don't do it for a living, but when I find time, I like to do that as well. So that's something that, taking the skies, has been a passion of mine.
Yeah. So do you have a private pilot's license?
Yeah, it's just like a visual VFR, as we call it. So no instrument yet. So absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So I could take you up on a Cessna, 172 or something, and go around a little bit and come back. But if I have to go too far, I have to take somebody else with me with an IFR license.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get you down to Australia at some point to fly here.
Yeah, I'll fly commercial there, and then we'll do something local.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
That's what I mean, because one of our other guests is actually a commercial pilot here in Australia, so Joanne Clark.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll get my license up, and one of the things we also have to do is to have periodic takeoffs and landings to keep up your license, and pretty much everywhere in the world, the regulation. And one of the things in this job is I'm limited by what I can do as a CEO of a company, how much risk I can take.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I've got to carefully balance as well, to see how much I can fly and can I even keep up my license. So, but if I'm coming to Australia, I'll make sure I have a valid license so we can do that.
All right, sounds great. Yeah. Now, how did you then? What's your business career been from those days in the Air Force then?
It's a pretty circuitous route, Jürgen. I actually came to the U.S. to further my education, even beyond the basic degrees that I had from India. And I actually wanted to learn more about motivating and inspiring people. So I actually went to a school in Pennsylvania, to do another master's in what we call strategic HR, to understand how do you motivate. It's about leadership and how do you motivate people, etc. And right after that program, I actually joined Roman Haas as an intern. And very quickly, that internship turned into a full-time role. And I ended up spending a significant chunk of my early career days in Roman Haas, as you know, through several jobs in multiple businesses in different regions of the world, working with people like you and fascinating folks like yourself and Alan Barton as an example. Worked in plastics and coatings and paints and adhesives and leather and Asia and Europe and building materials and building products, and finally into electronic materials. And if you remember in Roman Haas, one of the things that we always had a grounding on is responsible care. Right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting because responsible care, product integrity, all happen to become part of our DNA. And to me, growing up in India with my dad in the forest services, scarcity was something that was ingrained, and say you always conserve your resources. You always, whether it's water or electric, you know how it is in Asia, right? The cost of food is so high, electric is so high, so water is scarce, food is scarce. So you grow up with that, and you learn conservation becomes second nature to you. And so that fit in very well with this responsible care concept, which is do things, with the larger environment in perspective. And through that, I was working. The whole concept of responsible care was fascinating, and I got involved in some of the work that we did with, ACC, which is the Medical Chemical Society, etc. And towards the right after a decade in Roman Haas, I started getting into the internet space. We actually created the first e-business group in Roman Haas. I don't know if you remember that. In 2000 under Raj, and I think Mike was there as well, and started put Roman Haas on the internet map. And I was also getting involved in electronic materials at that point with powder coatings and our Rodel acquisition, etc. And I was called, in one of the presentations I was doing outside, I ran into people from Philips. And talk to them about what we were trying to do with leading this company, the chemical company, into this internet age. And those guys were fascinated. And of course, after about a year's worth of talking back and forth, and they sort of wanted me to come in and work for them and sort of pull them as well. Seemed like a very fascinating idea, because in Roman Haas, as you know, we're all in the back end of the value chain, right? We don't really come face to face with real end users.
That's right.
Which has always been an issue for us, right? You can come a little closer with Pain Quality Institute and things like that. However, it wasn't really first-hand, connection with the customer. So this Philips thing offered the opportunity for me, and I thought, that's an interesting way of staying close to the marketplace. So I moved to Philips, and again, taking with me this whole concept of conservation, right? So this idea of reduce, reuse, and recycle just kind of gets ingrained in you. So in Philips, I did the same thing. Ran businesses, and then eventually led their LED lighting sort of industry, and as a global team. And the one thing that is kind of bothered me and sort of drove me to do things was this slow pace of movement in large companies. I think you are familiar, you know that.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's just the way corporations work.
That's right. Yeah.
And the larger the corporation, usually the longer time it takes. And Philips being multinational, as you always, and as most other companies are, going back and forth, it was kind of delaying things, slowing things down. So I actually went to the proposal of them to start my own LED lighting company. And Philips actually agreed to invest with me if I raised money from outside companies. So we created this idea of an LED lighting company outside that would sort of become a good supplier and a partner to Philips, in which we did that. I raised private money and got in there. It went public, and then became too big for me to handle. So it's just one of those things that you got to be careful about. However, the career-wise, just to give you an idea, all along the theme has been sort of responsible care, which I believe, in many ways, Jürgen, is the predecessor to sustainability.
Yeah.
So if you take a look at sustainability, you extend that a little bit, because responsible care and product integrity was always doing things right by the environment, the economics, and society.
Right, yeah.
I mean, Melbourne was a classic example. I mean, the plant in Melbourne for us was amazing, right? That kind of integrated thinking is what today we are trying to push on sustainability. So all along, my drive in businesses has been that the concept of how do you get to economic gains with environmental consciousness and social awareness, and do all three at the same time. And then right after Philips, I did this LED lighting company that became too big, and I was tapped in to take a look at this company, which is Noveda. Because one of the things that we were facing was, you're familiar with LEDs, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's a new type of lighting. We started doing this in about 2001, I believe, in Philips, and we kept pushing it. The challenge with LEDs has always been demonstrating the value of lighting. Because people always compare it to an incandescent light bulb, and not just from a light output, but also from a price perspective.
That's right, yeah, and they look at the cost to acquire rather than the lifetime use cost.
Life cycle cost, right? And that's just human nature. And no matter how much the argument you give them, it always goes back to, well, I paid 20 cents for this. Why am I paying $30 for this? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's light, right? So how do you get the value? And part of that, my take on this is the ignorance or that automatic move to discussing price or basing your decision based on price is based on the fact that they don't have a lot of information. We've been used to buying light bulbs looking at watts. Well, really, why should you be looking at how many watts you pull from the grid? You should be looking at how much light you get, the quality of lumens, right? Not the watts. But it's long story. So one of the things that I sort of took away from that experience was, if we are able to use data and give people intelligence, they make the decision, say, you know what, I'm going to buy this LED. I don't mind paying $10 for this or $20 for this. Giving them the data, the way they like it, when they want it, how to use it, is something that would be absolutely powerful.
Yeah.
And so when this company came up, Noveda came up in discussions, the company had the technology to do real-time assessment and monitoring of any device in a building, whether it's your electric or your renewables or water or natural gas. So I said, well, if we can take that and make it even bigger and connect it to every device and give people the right feedback, I think that would be cool. So I decided to take on this role in 2010, and since then I've been building this out, with a very small, amazing team of people, where we're able to connect to any hardware that you have in your building and give you real-time consumption, not just numbers, but comparison. So as an example, you'll say, well, how much am I using today compared to the same time last week or last month or last year? How much am I using compared to a national average? So you can do internal benchmarks, outside benchmarks. If you have 100 buildings, you can put them all on one screen and say, oh my God, this building here is consuming a lot more than this one, and they're all exactly the same. It'll give you alerts. So all kinds of things rolled into a simple web application, and we use internet for that. So it's all cloud-based technology.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what we do today, and kind of how I kind of came into that. And today, we've been doing it, the company's been doing it for about 7 years. I've been in it for about 5 now almost, and we're kind of pushing this. And we have global clients pretty much everywhere. And interesting enough, now everyone's talking about big data, and we've been doing big data for about 7 years, which is the best part. So we have a little bit of a lead, and our UI or the user interface is simply fantastic. At some point, I wish if you're on our website, you can take a look at our user interface. It really is really fun. It's patented and it's fantastic. So that's going to give you an idea.
Yeah, no, that's great. I had a brief look at it, and it does look very impressive, and I like those kind of applications because, like you say, they give you real data, live data that's right up to date, and it educates the user. And I know we've recently installed solar panels on our house, and that came with a similar sort of monitoring system where we can check how much power we're generating, how much we're using, how much is going back into the grid, how we're performing compared to people in similar locations, and then of course how we're performing now compared to a month ago, which is interesting in and of itself because you can see the differences in the time of year and height of the sun and all that kind of stuff. But my wife is absolutely fascinated by that. She's normally not a big data person, but she's on there every day. She gets home from work, she jumps on that, has a look, says, oh, we've generated this much power today and here's how much we've used. And the interesting thing about that is now she's changing her behaviour, because she's saying, well, I'm going to put the washing machine on middle of the day because that's when we're generating our own power and all this kind of stuff.
See, that's the best example of how data can drive behaviour change. So one of the things we do, in fact, she doesn't have to wait until she gets home, because the Noveda application, you can get it on your iPad or your iPhone or your PDA, and you can be anywhere. And you all of a sudden get an alert saying, Jürgen, your consumption now has gone up 20% from same time yesterday. What's going on? I mean, you get an alert, which is a beautiful thing. So, wait a minute, my kids must be home doing something. Or maybe someone's running the washing machine now. But that level of intelligence, and it's interesting, it does change behavior. So we have about 3,500 installations worldwide, large and small, and mostly, in fact, all of them commercial. We have very few residential. And across the board, we've noticed about somewhere between 5 and 7% reduction in consumption because of behavior change driven by the monitoring. They're not putting in controls. They're not doing any major equipment changes. Just by putting monitoring in, we can see a 5 to 7% reduction based on behavior modification, which by itself is fantastic. So the return on our product, on the investment in our monitoring system, is somewhere runs between 6 weeks and 6 months, which is fantastic. Now we also have control systems. So if somebody wants to put in controls, say I want to control your lighting for daylight control and occupancy and motion sensing and all that. We have our upgrade system, which we upgrade to controls. So it doesn't matter what type of lighting you have, fluorescence or LEDs or something else incandescent, we are able to control it down to the right level so your consumption goes down significantly. So we are able to save people, I would say 40 to 50% of their lighting costs just by controlling that automatically.
So who are your customers then?
Most of our customers are commercial, retail, industrial clients with multiple sites. So as an example, Staples is a great customer. Staples is the big box office retailer, we monitor all 1,500 of their stores in the country. And other financial institutions like JP Morgan Chase, Deutsche Bank. These are all our clients, large multi-site clients. That's who we like to go after, is where we can add tremendous value if you have more than, let's say 10 or 15 locations. You familiar with NRDC by any chance?
No.
Yeah, NRDC is, check them out. It's an amazing organization. It's Natural Resources Defense Council. It's a global lobbying NGO that works across the globe in conservation of natural resources. They're working with governments on policy, etc. They actually are a client. They did a bid for a product and we won the bid in 2012. So we're monitoring their locations all across the US and Beijing as well. So they have an office in Beijing as well. So we monitor the Beijing. Rolls-Royce is a customer of ours in the UK, so we monitor their location. So we have large, blue chip clientele, and everybody who has the product loves the user interface.
Sounds terrific. So, and I noticed also you have some partnerships there with Bayer was one that was mentioned on your website, and the Green Schools Initiative, which sounds fascinating.
This is, if you look at schools as an example, Green Schools Alliance, they have 3,000 members worldwide. And just in the New York area, they have over 1,800 schools, which we have on our dashboard now. The schools can use the platform not only to reduce their consumption and optimize it, they can also use it for education purposes in real time. And this is fascinating to see kids. In fact, we have a competition platform that you can add on. And Baylor University is using it along with others like Trinity and Medi and a few other colleges. So now New York schools will also start using it, where students can compete between schools within schools to lower their consumption. By doing meaningful things. So now that is an amazing big step, and we've seen that give significant results. By the way, everything that we do is data-based. So You change out one light bulb and you see the dial go down, right? The kids get, wow. And everything gets translated to dollars and cents and pounds of carbon. So it's just amazing, and they just get very excited. That's the beauty of the entire thing. So with schools, it's ideal because it's not just to conserve energy and water, it's also for education, which I think, I like the idea of it's kind of doing that simultaneously, which fits into this whole concept of sustainability, of giving economic, social, and environmental benefits.
Yeah, and the education thing then drives the change of behaviour across a whole generation.
It's the best thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I like the idea. You talk about smart. In fact, your whole website is organised along those lines: smart data, smart user, smart companies, smart communities. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's we were talking about the smart grid, right? And how do you when we don't have smart buildings, and how do you actually take them from there? So we provide the hardware for people to make their building smart. If you don't have smart meters, we provide a little box that we actually make it. They can put it on in your house. It's like a little gateway that sends data to the cloud wirelessly or wired, depending on your choice. Yeah. And then so we turn that data back to the consumer as intelligence, making them smarter and say, oh my God, I didn't know that I use the least electric of all of my neighbors, or a similar house in a climate zone. And now you start giving them information. You can save so much money here. You can do this. We also have a platform that's called Make Me Sustainable, that will give you recommendations on what you can do to lower it based on whatever you're using, whether it's water or electric or light bulbs, or whatever it is. So it's called makemesustainable.com. It's based on the Facebook platform. So we are providing tools like that for people to get educated so they can make a change in their consumption. And so that sort of gives you the idea of driving behavior change. But at the end of the day, if we give people the intelligence and start giving them better information, they start making better decisions. Now the whole community gets educated, right? Then we say, okay, maybe I go to renewables, maybe then I go to storage. And then we start lowering our carbon footprint, our consumption. We don't have to build plants anymore. And then the 2-degree difference, I hopefully will be able to make it there. So are you familiar with the 2-degree?
Yeah.
So that's, remember, it's all going towards that, which is one of the things. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, so coming back to you, Govi, what do you spend most of your time doing day to day?
These days, 3 things I spend my time on mostly, Jürgen. First is obviously sales, when talking to large corporations. And I don't have a large sales force. I actually have channel partners. So I work with channel partners or my strategic accounts to actually build a sales trajectory. The second one is actually building and coaching the team. That's just as a non-stop thing that you can never do enough of. And the third one is talking to investors. That's pretty much most of my time, and which accounts to, a 9 or 10 day week usually. So you'll know how it goes.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme with the people I interview as well.
Well, and it's interesting because one of my investors, a very good investor of ours, is a fund in Australia, in Sydney, Raven, and these guys, and absolutely fascinating people. And it's interesting, they'll have great ideas. In fact, we're trying to do a joint venture in Australia as well with these people. And they're trying to build some, understanding of the space there. And their conversations will happen at 1 a.m. Eastern time, 12 a.m. Eastern time. It doesn't matter. It just goes around because it's interesting conversations. Yeah. So it's literally the clock. And you know how the time zone works, right? If you have a small team, you have to do it. So, you can't delegate, you can ask somebody else to do it. So that's the fun part.
Yeah, that's great. So when you first meet somebody, Govi, and they ask you what you do, what do you tell them? What's kind of your one-sentence elevator pitch?
The simplest version for us is we lower operating costs for buildings worldwide, for every customer, and lowering their carbon and giving them a very, very easy way to get cash flow positive on their utilities. It's just lowering cost and becoming green. It's just single, really. And the value proposition that we are able to provide that today, Jürgen, is because of our associations and alliances with financial institutions, we can give that to people with no capex. So we'll say, how do you like not to spend a dime and lower your operating cost and put money in your pocket and become green? Wow, that sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Well, we make that happen. And that's exactly what we do. It's very simple. There's no rocket science. I'm not bending molecules and I'm not doing polymerization anymore. None of that stuff. This is very straightforward, very simple.
Yeah, but adding immense value. Yeah,
that's what I hope to do. Yeah,
yeah, and also influencing positive change, which is fabulous. Yeah. So, is there something that you worry about in your role or in the company that keeps you awake at night?
Quite a few things. I mean, it's always, it's never easy, especially if you're a startup, right? It's one of those things that it's constantly going on and constantly changing, and you're trying to kind of build scale, innovate at the same time, and these are some of the dual-edged sword kind of issues, and I'll talk about that in a second. But to go back to your question, what worries me? I mean, two things that I worry about a lot. One is to continue to build and hold on to the really good team that we have, and continue to build on that.
Yeah.
Which is always it's from the beginning. It's been by having people who are smarter than you around you, and I've been lucky in my life to be able to do that. And in Noveda as well, we have some really, really amazing people. And so how do you keep them engaged and excited and motivated and continue to build there? So as we scale. So that's my first, that's just continuous because it's dynamic, right? I mean, because we don't chain people. I mean, they can leave anytime they want, right? So the only thing that holds them on here is inspiration. And it's not, they can always make more money elsewhere if they choose to. They can find other better things to do. So how do you actually keep them completely excited and inspired? That's the first thing that kind of keeps me awake. And the second thing is the part about finding continued investment until we are able to make the break. So as a startup, that's one thing that you do, because the Internet of Things, as we call them here, the connected stuff, the energy monitoring, water monitoring, it's still a ways off. I think we are, conservatively speaking, I believe we are about maybe 5 to 7 years ahead of the time. So just like we were with LED lighting, in 2001 or 2002, people said, "LED what?" And I say, "LED," they say, "What is that?" So now with monitoring, less than 3% maybe of the buildings are actually monitored in the world. So how do you commercially survive? How do you survive as a viable entity when your commercial success is so limited? And how do you sell? I can't hire a huge sales force because that's too expensive, and then yet have to sort of make sales happen. So that's why we've gone to channel partners. So how do you work with channel partners? How do you make? So we've been lucky. We've got some channel partners. I think I'm trying to build a little bit more. But those are two things that keep me up. I'm sort of worried about is one is the team, and second is the sustained investment until we break for cash.
Yeah, well, they're pretty big challenges, right? So you haven't found an answer for either one yet?
I think the first one, I'm not sure if I have a fully baked answer because it's evolving, as you know. Teams, and you run a team, you know exactly what it is. We have an amazing team, and it has gaps in it. And so technology-wise, I've got a very amazing team, but I'm growing technology in multiple areas. We're getting into controls, we're getting into the smart grid. So how do you kind of attract the right talent, the right type of talent? And you have to have a certain level of critical mass. And luckily, we've got a blue chip set of clients, and we're trying to build innovation through them. So, and that's part of the whole issue is how do you actually connect to the right customers so you can get the project load and innovation that drives people, to you, talent to you. That's one. We also have a pretty good, like a stock option program. Everybody gets stock options. It's not just, the C-suite, as they call it. Everybody shares in it. The third one is communication. So it's open dialogue. Communicate. So we do town halls almost every month. Open discussion and dialogue. It's a small team. You can do that. They know where we stand in terms of the business development, investments, funding, alliances, people auditions. I mean, just very, very quickly we run through it. It's a very engaged team. Even though it's dispersed, we have a very engaged team. So communication becomes absolutely key. So, and we have ideas flowing across the board. So, and there's, when you get down to day-to-day operations, giving them the latitude to make mistakes, as an example, that's okay. And the question is, how do you learn from them very quickly and then sort of recover so that you don't make it again? And so what are the learnings from that? So give them a leeway and have fun. I mean, the interesting thing is over the last 5 years, I think over the practices that we have now come down to the core group of people who absolutely want to be here, not have to be here.
Yeah.
So, and that makes a big difference, and it makes a huge difference when you get to that part. And my thing is, how do I build on that? So that for the first part, I've gotten that covered. To a degree that I'm fairly comfortable. I'm not completely comfortable. I like to build a team on, which is the next part, which is if I can find sustained investments, I can also attract people, and not just with money, but doing other things as well. So it's like a chicken and egg thing. You got to do both.
They're very closely related. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dance, right? You got to do the dance.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's ever a perfect answer. You've got to just keep at it all the time, and that's a beauty. And it's not just me. I've got a nice, great team around me, which is they're all like excited, motivated, passionate, inspired to do the right thing. And like you said, if you look at our website, you'll see everything that we do goes towards lowering carbon, lowering cost, right? Improving productivity. So it's a good thing, and you feel good about it. Every minute we are helping somebody lower their cost. Every minute.
Yeah.
Which is beauty.
Yeah. Well, there's some really fascinating insights there as to how you manage your team and how you motivate and inspire them. So thanks for sharing that. I've certainly noted some ideas there. That's great. So, you've talked quite a bit about the web, and certainly, you were involved in the early days in Roman Haas, and I kind of remember being involved in Paint Quality Institute, which was my first exposure to the web. So when did you realise that, the internet was something that could provide a tool that's going to change the way we do business?
Wow, it seems like that's a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
I think this was the time when we sort of drove for this to create this e-business group in Roman Haas, which was now I think about 20 years ago. Do you remember Chuck Gruber by any chance?
Yeah.
Chuck and I actually were the two people were the first two people in the group that started creating and coalescing this whole e-business group, and we were pushing for that through several other things. In fact, just before that, in the coatings group, we were doing something. The building products group, we were doing something by coalescing this. I don't know if you're familiar. Elemica was an industry exchange that was created. So that was about 20 years ago, and that's when things started coming together. And of course, we did a lot of research in that. I guess in that year or two, I would say maybe a year and a half or so, a rapid learning curve. And that sort of also led me to sort of move on to this phase and sort of drive to the connectedness and to the internet and things like that. So of course landed me right in the center of the smart grid as you speak. So the internet. But yeah, it's about 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? And how things have changed in that 20 years. Yeah.
I know, and it's interesting. Every 2-3 years, that speed of change accelerates even further.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing. I mean, and for us, it's even more prevalent as we see, the cloud computing. For us, it's interesting. Today, everybody calls it cloud, right? But this is what Noveda was doing 7 years ago, and we started off as a cloud-based company,
yeah.
And we continue to do big data. Of course, you put new words around it. However, the ability. So today, we can turn off lights. In fact, we just launched one about last month, a product where municipalities can look at their entire street lighting network on their iPad and just decide to turn it off and on if they want to, a manual override. Mm-hmm. They can say how much every street light is consuming in electric, and they can alert when one of them has an issue.
Yeah.
Right? So they're never out of streetlights. The streetlights never go off. I mean, they never, are down. Particularly, if they get an alert, somebody can be sent to fix it. It gives them statistics on how much they've used, when it came on, daylight, dawn to dusk operation. All of that stuff, just in your iPad or your iPhone or in PDA. That level of connectivity can happen with every device in a building.
Yeah.
It could be a manufacturing process. It could be anything else. Your lights, your HVAC system, all of that stuff, that intelligence, and based on weather, based on local weather, we're combining all of that stuff. The amount of stuff that you now can do just with your PDA, your personal device, is just amazing. Your smartphone is absolutely fantastic, and it can do the same thing at home. And Nest has launched, the thermostat that you can control.
Yeah.
That's just the beginning. Now, you got to be careful about how much you give with security and all that stuff in there. So, which is why we are more particular about doing this on the commercial side, because we're all security driven and so on and so forth. However, the technology part is changing dramatically. Now it's even becoming faster and faster.
Yeah, it's amazing, and the opportunities that's opening up for people to do different things again. So yeah, it's quite amazing. Yeah. So what do you see as, you talked a little bit about the challenge of funding and the challenge of attracting and keeping the right talent. What do you see as the main risks of being an innovative company and driving innovation and driving change?
You mean the risks of being innovative?
Yeah.
I'll talk about it from a startup perspective, or a small, what they call SME, or a small medium enterprise, not an established company. Because in an established company, if you don't innovate, then you're bound to sort of, obliterate yourself, I think.
Yeah.
You're sort of around the path. However, for a small medium enterprise, either startup or just post-startup phase, where the startup has come together primarily because of an innovative idea, right? I mean, that's how startups start. There's an idea, somebody has a passion, and you because nobody starts a company and then sits down to say, well, let me see what I can do. I mean, they don't do that, right? There's an idea that sort of sparks a company, like Noveda as an example. So in that case, where the DNA of the company, the people that are starting it, is primarily driven by innovation, there the challenge becomes, how do you take that innovation, and at what time do you actually start commercializing? Because if you don't do that, you will just innovate and innovate and innovate and innovate, but then there's no money being made.
Yeah.
Well, and then at some point it's a downward spiral, right? And I've been in that situation where I've got some amazing entrepreneurs and technology folks whose DNA, it was phenomenally innovative people, and they were innovating a lot. However, keeping us from commercializing, and reaching scale. Because making a product once is okay. You got to make it again and again and again, and to be able to sell the stuff to make some money, right? Yeah. To lower your cost of operation. So scalability becomes an issue. So the risk of innovation is, if you're not careful, especially for small medium enterprises, if you're not careful, and especially if your DNA is driven by innovation, if you don't watch it, you may not be able to commercialize in time, and so meet your profitability targets, etc. So that's the one risk about it. The other flip side, obviously, is if you don't have continuous innovation, then you will fall behind very quickly. Which is why I like the idea of this book, this Peripheral Vision, Paul Schoemaker and George Day, where one of the things I think it's not my phrase, but I'm sure somebody else has mentioned this before. So market paranoia, right, or organizational paranoia is something that drives people to sort of probe and look outside and stay connected with the market, which drives innovation. So and that's the concept of peripheral vision that Schoemaker and Day talk about largely, and actually it's an amazing idea. So that part of the risks of not doing that, if you're not connected to the market, then your lifeblood for innovation sort of goes away, and that's a big risk. So you got to make sure that you stay connected to the market.
Yeah, that's a very important message, isn't it? And also, I think inherent in that is innovation for innovation's sake is not necessarily a good thing. It's got to be something that has a practical use that can then be translated into a profitable business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've challenged this in large companies. We've had this challenge where we have a large technology contingent, and where their goal objectives is to innovate. And this whole market conversations and customer input and customer feedback, and we have consultants coming in and helping us and trying to change behavior. For small companies, it's the other way around. You've got to make sure that you commercialize, because if you don't, it's just innovation. Looking for the sake of innovation is not going to take you anywhere. And giving the customer what they want. In many cases, it's not in this whole concept of having a perfect product. And so, well, if it's good enough, this whole thing about good enough, post some gains in the market, get some wins, and then continue to innovate. And that sort of becomes a trick for entrepreneurial self-starters and startup companies, where we need to learn how to actually make that connection. And a lot of people have done that very successfully.
All right. So what you talked about flying before. So is that your main hobby, or do you do some other things? What do you do to keep balanced and when you're not working 9 hours a day?
9 hours a day. If I gotta get off in 9 hours, that'll be thrilled, but that'll be an amazing thing. 19. Well, I don't fly as much these days, largely because of the insurance constraints and time, etc. I do, when I'm trying time away from work, I do travel with the family quite a bit. We love visiting places, especially in Europe, and we're actually planning some trips to Asia as well. New Zealand and Australia are on our list.
Great.
Kids definitely want to go there, so we'll definitely do that as well. We just went to Iceland recently, which is absolutely fabulous. This was this past summer. We were in Iceland, and I've never been there before. It's actually a really beautiful place. Yeah. So we're exploring new areas is something that we like a lot. Spend a lot of time with the family, and the other hobby, which I like to take it as a hobby, Jürgen, is actually fixing things at home. I mean, all these things they've done. So you got it. It doesn't matter what you do. So something has to be fixed. So I end up taking that on as a hobby, and getting my son involved in it. So it's always fun to get that part of it. And yes, when you have growing kids, you always have interests that you got to take on. So a lot of stuff to do outside of the workplace as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's good to get and see different things, and particularly to share it with your family, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, you've put up a prize of a book, so I'll ask the question anyway. Have you read any interesting books recently that you'd recommend to us?
Quite a few. I mean, I don't know what to rank the best. In fact, I think Alan talked about Cradle to Cradle, which has been on my list, and actually it has been on my list. I actually worked with the author, Bill McDonough. He and I were on the same board together in U.S.-China Center for Sustainability, and I worked with him quite a bit. Very, very interesting personality, amazing guy. That's a great book, actually. It's a great concept. There are, the whole concept of peripheral vision, I would recommend people, and in fact, George and Paul Schoemaker has written a bunch of other books on the idea of scenario planning. So if you explore Schoemaker's sort of a bio, you see a bunch of books on scenarios and how the whole decision strategies. How do you actually make decisions in companies, whether you're large or small? And it could be for innovation, it could be for operational efficiency, it could be for something else. But getting that kind of decision-making process and having an outside-in perspective with this peripheral vision, I think tying it all together, those are amazing, concepts. So I would definitely have people talk a little bit again, take a look at those books as well.
Yeah.
And these days there are tons of books on the leadership concept. But in keeping with your theme, there's one other book that I think people would find interesting, Jürgen, it's on this Internet of Things, and with the theme, and there are tons of them, and I've read quite a few. The one that struck a chord with me I think it's a book called From Machine to Machine to the Internet of Things. I don't remember if I noted down the name of the author. I think it's either Jan Holler, and I was trying to bring the book, and I had to go somewhere else this morning, but do the research on it. I think it's Jan Holler. Amazing. It's a well-written book. It's almost like a primer for businesses not into it yet. If you talk about what this whole Internet of Things is all about, it's machine to machine, right? And humans sort of getting the intelligence to be able to do what they think makes sense. That, I think, gives a very good overview of how things will change in the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Right? So that's the other book that I would recommend.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I have come across that somewhere, but I haven't read it yet. So we will post links to those underneath the video in the show notes, and so our listeners can look those up. Thanks, Govi. So if you had a magic wand and could fix one thing in your business right now, what would that be?
Just one.
Just one?
I would, if there's only one thing, then I would definitely like to get a strategic investor who has a built-in channel for our product suite, if I may. So and through that we can build a lot of things. So if it's just one thing, I would look for a strategic investor who would actually be able to do it. Now, I am looking and working the channels to get the right kind of company interested. And that takes time, as you know. Yeah. And it also has to be done at the right time, because I've got my investors who I need to make sure that they are happy with the decisions. And so we have an amazing business at the technology, the platform, and it's in the right space, right, at the right time. It's being primed up right now. So now is the time. So yeah, when you wave the magic wand, that's what I'll take, a strategic investor.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see if our listeners can help with that.
I'll take any guidance, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to the innovation round, or the buzz as we call it here, and basically it's 5 or 6 questions that hopefully you'll give us a really sharp answer to, and share your insights and really blow away our audience with your answers.
That's right.
Yeah. So what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
The number one thing some people need to be more innovative is to be connected to the world.
Yeah.
And when I say the world, is all your stakeholders.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you connect. You've got to get behind the minds of the people. The suppliers, the competitors, the customers, the end users, the decision makers, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Regulators these days, so stay connected.
That's great advice, yeah. So be connected to all the stakeholders. Great. What's the best thing that you've done to develop new ideas or new products?
The best thing I've done here is actually to create a meaningful dialogue with our strategic customers. Because that has driven us to innovate significantly on platforms that never existed before.
Okay.
So we've been able to take this, leaps and bounds, and that has happened because of that dialogue with the strategic customers, and that is huge. There are many things that follow, but the first thing starts there, because without that, there's no dialogue, no input, no information, no data, no product, all that stuff.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit familiar from back in the Roman Haas days.
I tell you, I mean, internet or no internet, some of the basic concepts of business and building customers and the strategic account management we talked about, that hasn't changed.
That's right, yeah. Okay, so do you have a tool or a system that you like using for driving innovation or improving productivity or improving the outcomes of innovation?
I've used tools before when we, in Roman Haas and Phillips especially, whether it's a combination of the Cooper's model and StageGate, if you have a process, make sure that you go through the decision making. And then we've also used things like Six Sigma, if you've done Six Sigma, any of the black belt processes. So we've used those. In the size of the company that I am running today, Jürgen, we just use basic simple tools like project reviews every Monday, communicate, right? And so open dialogue, right? So make sure that everybody is connected. And the tool that we use is customer input, market input. I mean, it's just those three things. And the small team is a lot easier. So we have not really put together any tools per se. These are more common sense things, but a lot of it is informed by the StageGate process as an example, right? And so if you don't have a process, things start falling down. So one of the things that we have instituted here is simple processes. Like, for example, we have a project review process. Everything gets reported. We manage by exception. So remember this whole thing about supply chain management on S&OP. So we do S&OP on a very small scale, right? Where your supply and demand has to come and you manage by exceptions. So, and we don't have an MRP tool because we are much smaller. We use smaller tools, but just making sure that they're all linked and that communication happens with the right people, so that the client care people are not talking out of turn from the developers. So how do you sort of keep that? And luckily we are a small team, so we're able to pull that together. So simple tool is communication, making sure your regular reviews every Monday, make sure you review, and customer dialogue. That's just kind of, for now, we're gonna make that, continue to keep doing that. And when we are scaling significantly bigger, then we'll start putting in tools. When we have umpteen people in different parts of the world, then you need to start putting in tools to make them connected all the time.
Yeah, that's right. And it's amazing. A lot of people forget the fundamentals when they go to sort of the big processes. So I think you're tackling that in a really good way. Keep the fundamentals there, and then as you grow bigger, make sure there's systems in place that those fundamentals become, still core and easier to do, perhaps.
Yeah, and that's part of and some companies have done some remarkable things of customer relationships, and how do you actually have the dialogue, and hopefully you'll be able to emulate them and keep that. And the good news is, even a small company like ours, we can very quickly ignore customers when we have some success, and you can't afford to do that. It doesn't matter. If you have the right customers, and you make sure you have the right customer base, and then you make sure that you're going to keep, talk to them. I mean, just have that dialogue.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the best way to keep a project or a client on track?
What we use today is a simple face-to-face review process. It's just one of those things that because I don't have a big process, so we do reviews with customers, on a very periodic basis. So we set that up and just follow milestones. Where are you on your milestones? It's very simple. I mean, it's logical. There's no, technically speaking, we don't use any rocket science methodologies here. Yeah. It's very basic and very simple. That's the process part of it, right? Then there's also the political aspect of dealing with the customer, and how do you sort of make sure that you're working with them, they're working with you. And when we are small and we're dealing with a large client, you can very easily be pushed down the chain. So even though we provide a high value product, how do you actually work the politics of that? So the technical aspect, the political aspect, the cultural aspect of all three of them need to be played. So customer relationships, therefore, become extremely crucial. So make sure that you have a relationship and not just parachute in for a dialogue here and a dialogue there. Yeah. Make sure that ongoing dialogue. So I find that when you have an ongoing dialogue with a customer, issues tend to get resolved proactively. If you don't, then every issue becomes a crisis.
Yeah, so communication is key then. As with most of the answers you've given, it's good. So finally then, what's the number one thing anyone can do to differentiate themselves, particularly in a small company like yours?
For me, it's very easy, Jürgen. The one thing that has helped us differentiate from our competition is having a kick-ass team. I cannot stress the importance of having an amazing and a kick-ass team, committed, passionate, inspired, and inspiring. So that's the whole thing. When you take anybody from my team and you'll walk away saying, "Wow, I want to work with this gal. I want to work with this guy." Yeah. That becomes it, and that, number one for success. Everything else follows from there.
That's great advice.
Thanks. I don't want to simplify it.
Yeah.
That is at the heart of it.
It was one of the challenges you raised, right, earlier on, how to sustain that, how to build that, how to sustain that, and how to grow it. Yeah, but it is key. Well, that's great. So what do you see as the future for Noveda then?
We're on a trajectory right now to build out and scale the product suite. We have several channel partners. We actually have another partnership we just recently signed for the channel partner, where we're going after controls, bringing in some controls technologies. So we're embedding our platform in hardware products. So when a streetlight gets sold, it's packaged in with the Noveda platform. It's like your, with your Samsung laptop comes loaded with a operating system, right? So very similar. Every piece of hardware that goes out will actually have a Noveda embedded firmware in it, which is what we want to get to. And we're getting there with smart meters and with lighting devices, and then with HVAC. So that's what I need to build out. And then it becomes an amazing, capability that then the minute that gets sold and turned on, we start getting the data. So now big data becomes bigger data, and very soon the biggest data. So we want to be the game changer in big data when it comes to full building monitoring and controls. That's using big data. That's where we want to be. So having a strategic partner and a strategic investor would ideally help us get to that scale level as well.
That's terrific. Yeah. Now, what do you say to those people that kind of worry about this whole idea of big data and the big brother is watching syndrome and all the concerns about privacy and if we can see everything? Valid concerns. I have the same concerns, so I'm actually one of them. The challenge there, Jürgen, is not how to prevent it, or it's how do we put safeguards in place so that the data is not used or misused, so to speak. We follow security protocols and the industry security protocols, so it's all encrypted, even though it's on the cloud. And by the way, our data, the customer owns their data. Even so, when we tap into a customer's hardware device, our customer owns the data always. What we do is only provide them what they get from us is all the fancy UI with the analytics, advanced analytics, alerts, recommendations, etc., 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 and all of that is encrypted. So doing things right, I believe has certain value to it, and not taking shortcuts. So it may cost a little bit more. However, it's essential to make sure that we do things right that way. So that's number one. The second thing is, if lowering operational cost and lowering carbon footprint is on top of our minds, which I think it should be, then we'll find a way to use this data en masse. And in energy, we can put in security measures and protocols that wouldn't have that level of exposure to the data.
What people get is just the streamlined data piece of their building, etc. So, and that's what we're doing. So we can build in enough safeguards to make sure we're doing things right. And part of what I'm also pleased with is this whole internet security movement that has started with people doing things right. So, which I think also has slowed down to some degree the move to the Internet of Things, because as much as people are talking about smart grid and etc., nobody's rushing to it. I mean, it's being done methodically. So just so you know, unlike the smartphone business and the personal space stuff, where their personal information, people willingly put in stuff on their phones, they don't even know that it's actually being tracked somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, so when the minute you get up and you turn your phone on, well, there's a data point that's been registered. I don't do that in my business because it just goes into the cloud. You know, it's on your energy, it's not on your personal movement, it's on a meter, it's on a building. So it's one of those things that we'll have to deal with. It will change the rules of engagement in society. Some significant policy shifts will happen. I mean, you've seen that already. You know, at various levels, at the government level, at the private sector level. The move there, however, for that whole connected planet, the Internet of Things, is already underway. The question is, can we do things right so that the data is not misused? And that's one thing that we participate in several dialogues, several forums to make sure we stay ahead of the game as well in terms of regulations and security and privacy, etc. That's something that's close to watch. I don't have answers. I have more questions than answers right now, but hopefully we'll all get there together. And the good news is lots of countries around the world are looking at this very actively.
Yeah.
So it's not something that is left alone. People are actually very consciously working on this for privacy and security, etc.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know that there's there are a lot of forums and a lot of international groups that are looking at this on a global basis. So hopefully it doesn't sort of get bogged down in politics or in everybody wanting to do their own standards, so we can come up with something that's universally accepted and does have those safeguards that you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so what do you see as the future for that industry then, and for the Internet of Things?
What do I see as the future for the industry? Specifically, if you're talking about the Internet of Things, my gut feel is we see this connectivity to the individual device increasing at a very rapid pace, and companies will be putting out all these peripherals, if you may, that can talk to one another, can talk to a hub, and so if you and I are not paying attention, we won't even know that we're actually being tracked or they're connected. I mean, just by virtue of having your little device here, it shows people know all kinds of things now. That when did you wake up, or when did you sign on, how many emails you send, what websites you went to, all that stuff, right? I mean, if you have a location tracker enabled on Google, then they know where you are at any given point of time. So all that kind of stuff. So it's a question of how much do you want to give out there. So those things will happen at a very rapid pace. I also can see, I can visualize the regulatory bodies sort of moving along very quickly to put in sort of safeguards, measures, etc. And I don't know which will lag one another, and that's a question we need to answer, because I think countries even like Australia, countries in Western Europe, the US and Canada, they're all looking at guidelines and what do you do and where do you put devices. So I'm not sure they'll be able to stop it. It'll just be one of those things like the gold rush, and everybody started putting in this connected device. So on the personal side, you'll see some rapid up and down movement in here, but trajectory will be to make sure everything is connected. And on the business side, believe it or not, things have been happening very steadily over the last several years, a couple of decades, through exchanges, through sensors, through control techniques, and all that stuff. It happened on the manufacturing side, it's happened on the other side. So now for me personally, for us in Noveda, we are we're hoping that this would happen on the energy and water space also pretty quickly. That hasn't happened yet. It's happening very slowly. Not because people are afraid of privacy, it's just that energy, for whatever reason, energy and water particularly, hasn't been top of mind for a critical mass of people to move the ball forward significantly. It's just one of those things that so we're pushing the envelope as well. So that will change the dynamic of what I would call the whole monitoring and control space, right? And if you tie in this whole idea about sustainability, everyone tracking everything, companies wanting to know how much they're spending, where they're spending, what is their sustainability value, all that stuff, and we're able to provide the data. That the market demanding that from companies will help drive our product as well even more. Yeah. So, for example, if you say, I don't know, take any beverage company as an example, any of the large ones, you see how much water they use in beverages. I mean, how much of it is recycled, how much of it is reused, how much of the bottle of one beverage, a soft drink, is made up of water that's coming fresh from the earth, and how much of it is recycled. I mean, do we know all these statistics? We don't. And companies are trying to get to those. Now, with Noveda, we're able to provide the kind of visibility and transparency and granularity into that kind of, into the world of data management. So I'm hoping that would move much, much faster. So the Internet of Things will open up amazing markets. I mean, new businesses, new models, traditional models. Monitoring will take on a big space because if you look at it, monitoring is essentially the first step towards everything. Yeah. If you're able to connect to a sensor, like you said, your wife gets in home and looks at the data and how much solar, how much electric can be produced from the solar array, and how much you're using, and is it better? Now that kind of information for everything. So how much is your refrigerator using? How much is your washing machine using? If I use my washer dryer at midnight, maybe I have a better rate. I mean, if you have a day use of electric, so things like that. And so algorithms can help you with all that stuff. So that will become very powerful. Yeah. And you'll see, and now with EVs, because one of the biggest issues, Jürgen, as you must have figured out, is it's not about having renewable energy like wind or solar or even mini hydro. It's a question of having energy when we want it, where we want it.
That's right. Yeah.
So distributed generation will become another big aspect of our lives, of not just having one big central plant, but having many small units, maybe a community plant as an example, that takes waste from your community and generates electric, right? And not, and solar, as good as it is, there's a finite window, right? So if there's no sun, you're not producing any power. So what do you have at night? Well, so the question is, storage is an important issue. It becomes a very critical issue. So you combine storage and other renewable devices and renewable sources, and then you work on efficiency, and then you have this smart capability of pulling power from wherever the closest, and at any on a 24/7 cycle, and making sure that you're using it most efficiently. That's smartness, right? That becomes really, really critical. So when we get to that part, I think that will be a huge, huge win for us across the board. And I think that's where we're headed to.
Yeah, that's an exciting possibility. And also, I mean, the example you mentioned about soft drink manufacturers, I guess if you take most industries, really, it's generally their highest costs are energy and water. So if they're looking simply for their own business to reduce costs, there has to be a great application there already, and then sort of taking that further into the sustainability and all the other benefits as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a massive market. It's one of those things that's just, like I said, early stages, and it's very quickly, I'm sure it'll balloon into really, really big business. So big data is something that we believe in and we practice, and we've been using big data for the past 7 years. And now it's a question of how do we market it, how do we scale, which is why a strategic partner investor would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Govi. Now, let's get to our competition. So, as I said earlier, Govi has very kindly donated a copy of Peripheral Vision by George Day and Paul Schoemaker. Now I'll let Govi explain what we'd like you to do to enter that competition. So what comments that we're looking for. So take it away.
Thanks, Jürgen. So what I'd like to do is the concept of peripheral vision is the idea of building organizational vigilance. And what I'd like to do is have people read the book, obviously, and comment on how they can or are using the concept of organizational vigilance to support their economic, environmental, and social strategies. So, in other words, people use the word sustainability, and I'm trying to stay away from that. But just if you look at your economic goals, your social goals, and your environmental goals, all three of them, how can you use, or how are you using this idea of organizational vigilance to inform those strategies and drive your business forward? So that's sort of the link that I want to sort of see. I know it's sort of a challenge here. That's a part of what I want.
That's why we give away the prize, right? Have to do a little bit of work.
Well, the book itself actually has some great tools.
Yeah.
I like George and Paul's the dialogue around I call this organizational paranoia. But how do you kind of stay vigilant? Scanning the environment, probing, analyzing, and then acting on it. And how do you make that a system so it doesn't happen just once? It happens continuously. And that idea of organizational paranoia, to kind of stay alert, and that becomes, that's why peripheral vision to me is a very powerful idea. So using that and leveraging it, not just from, comparative advantage these days has to have a thread of economic, environmental, and social strategies. So having that idea sort of tie into it, I think will help companies become significantly competitive advantageous. So making that link is what I want people to kind of comment on.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So leave your comments under the video, and of course, the idea here is that we're all learning from one another. So that if you have some brilliant insights, then share it with our community here. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'll ask Govi to come by and pick the best contribution and award that prize. Sound good?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jürgen. Looking forward to it.
Great. Okay, so in conclusion, then, what's the number one piece of advice you'd give to anyone who wants to be a leader in innovation and in their industry?
What advice would I give? Well, I make more mistakes today than I've been making before, so I'm hoping I'm learning something from that. The advice I would give goes back to what I talked about before, is don't make innovation a product of chance, and make sure it's there is a process, even as informal as it may be, that ties in all the stakeholders in a dialogue. And that your own associates and employees, so it's your team with the market bearers, like the competition, the customers, your enablers, your channel partners, and all that stuff. So that dialogue with the open communication, that becomes, I hate to repeat the same thing again, that becomes a very crucial piece of the mechanism that you have to put in place, even if it's informal. That I would tell people, do that. Open, transparent, make it open, make it transparent, and that will drive innovation to a large degree. Because ideation, if you take a look at how ideation happens, then sort of taking that down to the next steps of product creation and all that, having that dialogue up front, you can prevent a lot of mistakes and also drive a pipeline of ideas that you can put through your funnel.
That's great advice. Thanks for that, Govi. Well, we've been going for quite a while now. It's well over the hour, so I really appreciate your time, and it's been a fascinating interview. So where can people reach out and say thank you for what you've shared with us today?
Thanks, Jürgen. Actually, it's been thrilling to talk to you as well, and to reconnect with you. And I think at some point later we'll talk a little bit about the Roman Haas days and all the fun that we had, which to me was an amazing learning ground. With working, if you go back to the team that was in Roman Haas across the board, I mean the global team, that was just fascinating. I mean, the amount of learning that we had there, and I'm still in touch with, I don't know, maybe 100 people, in that close network. So, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, more than that, I would say. People can reach me or through our website, and we have a Twitter account there. We don't use Facebook as much, although the Make Me Sustainable platform is based on Facebook, so they can reach me there as well. But the website actually has ample ways of reaching out to me.
Okay.
And if people want direct comments and to reach out to me directly, Jürgen G. Rao at Noveda.com always helps. And like I said, I'm usually on email most of the time, and I'll be able to respond to people as well. The website is a great tool to go in and check out. And there's a bunch of videos that people can see as well on the monitoring, what we do, etc.
That's right, yeah. There's a whole YouTube channel with probably about 30 or 40 videos, I think.
Yeah. We've done quite a bit of getting this whole education piece out. So.
Yeah, it's great. All right, well, we'll post those links underneath the video as well. So finally then, Govi, who would you like to see me interview on a future podcast, and why?
In staying with the theme, there's a long list, Jürgen. I'm going to give you a list of people.
Yeah.
I would start, having talked about peripheral vision, and to bring to your viewers, bring home the idea of this peripheral vision and this, how do you go through this organizational vigilance. I would recommend you talk to Paul Schoemaker. I haven't talked to Paul in a while, but I'm sure he'll be thrilled. And he's got an amazing track record of innovative ideas, and I've actually leveraged his capability. He's come and helped me in couple of instances specifically to drive change, and we actually made it happen.
Yeah.
It actually made it happen. So, and those was even large companies and an industry. We actually tried to make an industry change, with Paul. So this whole concept of organizational vigilance. So my recommendation is Paul would be a great start. I would definitely, have you recommend talk to George Day as well after that. But start with Paul. It's a great first step. And then I'm going to give you a longer list of corporate, not corporate, more organizational leaders and innovative entrepreneurs who actually, who are doing this. So start with Paul, and I'll give you a list of names for you to follow up on.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks, Govi. So, Paul, look out. I'll be in touch with you to invite you to a future podcast. So, thanks so much, Govi. It's really been great to catch up with you and learn about Noveda and what you're up to there, and all the exciting plans and vision that you have, and particularly learning about how you inspire the team and keep them motivated. That's one of the gems and takeaways for me today. So I wish you all the best at Noveda, and I'm sure I'll be hearing more and more about it. I'll certainly keep in touch, and thank you again for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you, Jürgen. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for having me. It's a great dialogue. I love the InnovaBuzz model, by the way. We should definitely talk. Thank you so much. It's been a great discussion. And like I said, if you need any more further information on any of the things I've talked about, feel free, if any of your users or your viewers are looking for help as well, of information, and vice versa. I'm going to reach out as well, because we're learning as we go along, and it's a journey. So I could use a lot of help and guidance as we build this team here as well. So thank you again for the opportunity. Great reconnecting.
Yeah, thanks, Govi.
Have a great day. Thanks, Jürgen.
Cheers. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed meeting Govi as much as I enjoyed interviewing him. It was great to catch up with him again, and I certainly had fun interviewing him. He's still that same driven, passionate, energetic individual, and of course highly intelligent, that I got to know so many years ago at Roman Haas. And it was fascinating to learn the story of Noveda Technologies, what they're up to, and the exciting future that they're facing. And Govi definitely is a very inspiring individual, and I can imagine that Noveda is a quite an inspiring workplace. Of course, you can subscribe to the InnovaBuzz podcast over on iTunes or on Stitcher, so that you'll never again miss a future episode, and we wouldn't want that, would we? All the show notes for this episode, including the books that Govi recommended and the links to the Noveda website and the means to reach out and contact Govi, will be at innovabiz.com.au/Govi Rao. That's GOVIRAO. All lowercase, no capitals, no hyphens, no underscores. By now you should know the drill. innovabiz.com.au/Govi Rao. So that'll have everything that we spoke about, including the links to reach out and thank Govi for all that he shared with us on this interview. Now remember, leave your comments underneath the video for your chance to win that book, Peripheral Vision, by George Day and Paul Schoemaker. Sounds like a fascinating read, and I'm going to add it to my list so that I'm up to date with that one as well. So leave a comment under the video and tell us how you are tying your economic goals and your social goals and environmental goals into the idea of organisational vigilantes to inform those strategies and drive your business forward. And I'll get Govi to swing by in a couple of weeks' time and award that prize. Now, Govi nominated Paul Schoemaker, who is in fact the co-author of Peripheral Vision, as a future guest on the InnovaBuzz podcast. So Paul, look out, I'm coming to get you on the podcast, and certainly I'm going to have to read that book before I interview you, obviously. So keep an eye on your inbox, Paul, because we're coming to get you. Now, if you like these podcast episodes, please give us a great rating on iTunes, because the learnings of these is just fascinating. I'm always blown away. I'm humbled that we get these people sharing their time with us. They freely come and talk to me. They answer the questions very generously, very openly. They spend often an hour or more on this podcast and make all this information available for all of us. So we really don't want to keep it to ourselves, do we? We want to share it more broadly so that more and more people can learn about the tips and the lessons from these wonderful entrepreneurs about how they've tackled innovation, how they've grown innovative products or innovative services through their companies. So go to iTunes, give us a great rating if you enjoy these podcasts. Now, until the next time, and there's some exciting guests coming up. We have Colin Gooch, who is the long-time research director from Resine Paints in New Zealand, and one of the most inquisitive and creative and innovative people that I know. I've always admired him, so we've got him coming up soon. And we've also got Troy Dean from Video User Manuals and WP Elevation coming up. So in a different industry, in the internet industry. And again, another really inspiring person who's very creative, very innovative, full of great ideas. So there's a couple of fantastic podcast episodes to look forward to. So that's all for this episode. Until we meet again, remember, if you don't innovate, you'll stagnate. So think big, be adventurous, and innovate on.